Let's look at what we can expect in the run-up to Super Tuesday. Joining me now for analysis on the race for the White House is Jacob Parakilas. He's Assistant Project Director at Chatham House. Thanks for joining us. There's all this talk, isn't there, about these early contests creating momentum for the rest of the race. Do you think we've seen that today?
We've seen it in different ways on both sides. The deal with Iowa and New Hampshire is they don't so much set the tone for the rest of the debate as set which candidates are going to take their case to the much larger number of states that vote starting at the beginning of March with Super Tuesday. So it's a winnowing process. I mean, the old line is that there are 3 tickets out of Iowa, and in this case, there are many more than 3 tickets out of Iowa. I suspect in the days to come, you'll see a few of the lower polling candidates on the Republican side drop out. I don't know who those would be, and you know, it's a very fluid situation, and with super PACs and the amount of money that's sort of unrestricted in the race at the time, you can actually stay in for quite a long time if you have a wealthy backer, as we saw in 2012 with Rick Santorum and even Newt Gingrich.
But you've got a situation where there are 2 frontrunners on the Democrat side and 4 frontrunners now on the Republican side. So it's much more fragmented on Donald Trump's side of the race.
If you look at Trump's margin, it was much smaller than Sanders' margin. I mean, that, however, doesn't mean all that much because Trump was running against 6 or 7 basically credible contenders, and Sanders is only running against 1. So Trump can win as long as the field remains fragmented. What the Republican establishment has been hoping for is to coalesce behind one candidate, but that's getting more and more difficult. Marco Rubio made that case for himself after Iowa. After his 5th place finish tonight, that's going to be a lot more difficult for him.
Very interesting to see how Bernie Sanders has got this big youth vote. Hillary Clinton's got the older voters, hasn't she? But this is emerging into her major weakness now.
It's one of the strongest demographic divides that we've seen on an age basis in recent American political memory. Sanders overwhelmingly gets the youth vote. Clinton overwhelmingly gets the votes of those over 55.
Which is the most useful to get into the White House?
Historically, voters over 55 turn out more often. Obama won. The deal with Obama's election was that it was advertised as a youth vote election, but it wasn't actually quite that simple. And young voters are often quite fickle. They frequently respond to online surveys but don't actually show up. Now, a lot of these things about this election have not followed the predictable pattern, so it's entirely possible that this will be one of those. But if we're going by historical evidence, Hillary's over 55 voters will make more of a difference ultimately.
But he's showing he's brought this energy to a younger voting public who don't necessarily go out and vote. If he can keep that going, he actually might create a whole new voting public through this and stay on top that way.
If he can keep the momentum going, and if he can broaden his appeal beyond the sort of whiter, more wealthy demographic that he's won with in Iowa and New Hampshire, then yes, he could make it. I mean, it is a real race. He could make it even closer. The fundamentals are still in Hillary Clinton's favor, particularly if you look at the number of endorsements that she's had. But there is a strong anti-establishment mood this year, and that might permeate through other aspects of the Democratic electorate.
And what do you make of Kasich? What does he stand for? Those people around the world that don't know much about him. Is he as conservative as some of the other members of the Republican race?
In the mid-1990s, John Kasich was one of the more conservative Republican members of Congress. Now he's widely seen as a moderate, which gives an indication of how the Republican Party has shifted over the last 20 years. Kasich is selling himself as sort of a technocrat, somebody with governing experience who can get things done. His positions are relatively conservative, but he's sort of downplayed that. He's talked more about his achievements as governor and his ability to work with Democrats and sort of reach technocratic solutions. Again, clearly an effective message in New Hampshire. Unclear how much that'll extend to the rest of the electorate.
I said there's 4 frontrunners. If you look at the statistics we just had up, actually there's 5 plus.
The space between Rubio and Kasich and Bush and Christie was actually pretty minimal.
Yeah, OK. Well, thank you very much indeed. We'll wait to see what the next race holds for us.